justice for all.
Have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Laura, you in favor?
Aye, yes.
Okay.
Turn this up a little bit.
All right. The first item is, item 3 is discussion of confidential attorney-client privilege communication regarding conveyance of real estate property for a proposed executive session, if anybody wants it. If nobody wants it, we'll move to item 4.
Well,
Well,
If I
if
have
somebody
some-
comes in, then we're,
Right.
and,
Well, we would have to go to another room or shut the door.
And we'd have to ask Drew to
Right.
do the video.
okay.
So that would just be if we wanted to see the letter?
Yeah.
If we
I mean,
wanted
it-
to what?
See the letter from the attorney that explains why we have to do the, do you know how
District
the
meeting.
meeting?
Yes, and I
not-
meant to
I
go,
think
I meant
last
to
week.
go to,
But it's pretty much described in items throughout the MOU,
Yeah.
why we're doing this. All right, if not, we'll move to item 4. It's a resolution to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Regional School District 13 and the Town of Durham for the conveyance of the Corn property to the Town of Durham. Can I have a motion and we'll have a discussion?
So moved.
Second?
All right. Do you have any, I know Lucy had some questions.
yeah, I
We
do.
had originally delegated Doug and Tim, along with our attorneys, to negotiate, so one of your questions was on the road, which I can handle, because we had, in many conversations with the Town of Durham, Picket Lane was off the table in terms of our discussions, and it was not pursued during, it may have been pursued on and off, but it wasn't part of the.
We brought it up, but it was not something.
I know,
Yeah.
but you know, I think at the time it was brought up, if I'm not mistaken, the culvert needed repairs.
It
And
still
I don't
does.
think they wanted to have that, take the road and have the responsibility of the culvert. Well, we paid the culvert.
Well,
We
the
paid for
culvert's
the
not
culvert.
done yet.
Pardon?
We didn't do the culvert yet. The town did the one up by Strong School, the town did that for the district, and we're doing this one right down here by Strong School.
Okay.
That won't be done until the summer.
Okay, but.
We repaired it, but it won't be
Yeah.
replaced.
But isn't that, it's part, we have the money for it.
Yes,
Isn't
we
that
have the
part of,
grant.
it was part of one of the bonds?
Correct, and
And,
the grant.
and we got a grant, so that's already covered.
Okay, but in the meantime, when you look at Picket Lane, Allenbrook Park is basically a Durham park. And also, if the Corn issue goes through, they're also going to be using Corn as a community center. So the road is actually gonna be open for a lot of public. And it just, I think about Middlefield when we upgraded the tennis courts. Middlefield, the district was gonna pay for it, but Middlefield was aware of the fact that a lot of Middlefield people use it, so therefore they contributed a certain amount towards the upgrade of the tennis courts. It just seems to me that the more and more that we have public Durham pieces, that it should be a public road.
Well, I think everybody agrees, but it's not gonna be part of this MOU, that's the issue. It's an issue for the district and the town to continue. I started that discussion with the town in 2015, and, you know, it has never moved very far without without any positive results. So I think it's still an issue. I think, you know,
Mhm.
if the board wanted to do it in the future, I think you'd have to do a traffic study. Put some lines out, measure devices out there and determine that, the traffic from the school buses and the cars and going to school versus what's going on weekends and Saturdays and Sundays, and baseball in the summer. You could probably make an argument that this road is being 50% used by non-school activities or something like that. And then, and then go to town with a proposal.
Do you think that the town, putting that piece aside, do you think the town would be willing to at least maybe just put some money aside, just to say, okay, in order to address the fact that we will be using the road more if all this passes, we'll just put aside, like Middlefield did, just in good faith, as part of being a good neighbor.
I would start.
Just putting this out there.
Yeah, I don't, well, they might, but not part of this agreement. And, you know, I think that you know, for example, snow plowing would be probably the first issue that we would wanna have, because we could, if there's no school, we don't plow the road immediately. So if they have an office in there, you know, with a state policeman or something like that, they're gonna wanna plow the road. So the issue will come up quickly during a snow
Okay.
season, and I think that's when we start to negotiate this.
Okay.
I don't think right now, we bring it up, it will kill the agreement.
Right, I understand that, but you know, it's too bad that,
Yeah.
we hadn't seen this, sooner, that we could have possibly put it out there, but
Well,
is the.
we've been talking about the road for 5 years.
That I know, but I hadn't seen all the details on the MOU. Is the bond paid off for corn? The bond that was, for
Yes.
their repairs, is that finally paid off?
I think there's one more payment due in
This year,
March,
yeah.
but it's
Of
not,
this year?
it's not a large.
I mean, not this year, next year.
Right.
So, and that's it, and it's,
That's
because I know, I
it.
remember that came up as an issue in the
Right.
past, and I wasn't sure exactly what the status was of that.
The
Okay.
other issue you raised is about surveying.
Yeah.
The town is doing the survey, and Doug and Kim, you wanna talk about the survey? Anybody?
What do you, with the lot lines?
Yeah.
Oh, the second question? Well, to date, we've spent about $8,500 with Nathan Jacobson Architects. Did I say 8,500? Did I say 85,000? 8,500.
Sorry, I got
8,500.
disconnected.
Okay,
You're back.
8,500. And then there could be another bill that we just didn't get yet, so it's probably around 10,000. Now, the reason that, to directly address your question with Center School, because Center School, as far as I know, was its own property,
Right.
there wasn't lot line and we didn't have to
Right.
identify integrate utilities and whatnot, whereas because it's a subdivision, we had to do
Right.
that here. The, district, Dr. Shook and I, you know, thought that, and that was worth our while to pay for that, which we did pay for, to, you know, move the MOU forward and give the building to Durham.
So,
We also have outstanding equipment on that property that is easements that, for pipes and other things that go
Yes, we have a
back and
list of
forth.
easements.
We need to identify where those are for our records as well
Correct.
as.
Right, there's a whole list here, yeah, because you were talking about doing the lot line. Is that what exactly does the 10,000 include?
That's exactly what it was, the map, the subdivision, the lot line, the easements, all that stuff.
Okay, when I looked at
Hi,
this map.
this is Bob Yamartino. Is all of that expenditure already done?
Yes,
So that work is complete and the expenditure was already made by the school district?
yes, because it had to be done in order to get to this MOU.
Okay, Lucy, you had another?
Yeah, when I was looking at the map, I was trying to figure out, and I actually blew it up a little bit bigger. Where exactly would the line be that you're proposing, for the school? And, you know, I'm not exactly sure what it encompasses, cause I know there's that's another piece that would be Durham is the playground. There's also, I know there's fields there and stuff like that, and I don't know exactly where the line was
If you
drawn.
look at the map, starting at the road, up in the upper right corner, you see
Mhm.
that line that's there that goes to a point?
Oh, so you're using the straight line,
Yeah,
okay,
that then goes over to a line where there's like a Z, and then it goes south,
yeah.
and then it comes back
So
towards.
that's this line up here. I wasn't sure what all this squiggly stuff was in here.
Well, one is this tree line.
Oh, that's the tree line, okay,
This,
Is it-
the squiggly one is the tree line, and then
okay,
this goes back to here, and then it comes back towards the school, very close. There's a little circle and a pin there. And then it goes back south towards, and it goes around the playground area. and then it makes a sharp turn
Is that right
back
here?
towards the school on the outer edge of the softball field. And then it goes back to the road.
Okay, so what exactly is in there? Is it just all grass? Is it part of the fields?
Well, there's
Because
a
it doesn't say.
There's a leaching field in there,
Okay,
a septic tank, and there's some piping and some electrical conduit, computer conduit, and other things that have to be identified on this map.
okay.
This area here that looks like a Lego, that's the current playground. This area over here is the softball majors field where the high school plays.
But that's outside of the boundary.
Yeah, and this area here are the two parking lots. If you've ever been in there, there's concrete dividers. These are the two parking lots that are adjacent, which we'll talk about the parking in the agreement when we have events. This is the agreement where we're gonna have different parking. And we agree to share it at different events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that in here.
And then, so the rest of it is now subdivided out, so we need to identify where the rest of the property is ours.
We have.
Any questions? Matt, is that correct for anything?
Yeah, I mean, I not much to add on that part,
Okay.
Bob, so.
All right. Doug or Kim?
We're still in pseudo
That's
executive
7 acres.
session, or?
No, we never went into executive
Okay.
session. So that's the 7 acres, 7.6.
7.24, yeah.
We're on item 4, the.
Oh, we're on, we're
There's a motion
discussing.
and a second, so we're on discussion.
Okay, so we've moved past that part. Yeah, I guess my general feeling is that, so there are, if the board, if it's desirable for the board to have this go through, that we should, one, make, every step possible to alleviate concerns from townspeople on both sides. Because, there's a lot of still continue to be questions on, maybe this is just because of the complexity of what's going on and everything else, but we already know that, there's a fair number of people that are not happy with the decision by the town to turn this into a community center. And I think that we have to, I think we made a decision. I think that the town's previously made a decision. I think this is, to me, a mere formality in the process, but I don't think it's being perceived that way. And I think that we need, and I guess this is more important for the district meeting when it comes up, that we need to have a strong unified front of support for the general agreement and process. Hopefully that support would also come from both town selectmen and their general support of it as well, because I think it's going to take all of that to make this a reality. Because remember, the alternative stays with the school, and we're either stuck with a continued bill of 30 to 50,000 rising, 80,000, whatever. The building continues to deteriorate, or we have to spend $1 million plus in demolition in a setting where we already have significant financial constraints and also many other things that money needs to be spent on. And so I think, this is one of the many different difficult decisions and steps that needs to happen to right the ship and get us on the right path. And so I think it's more just for the district meeting and I think the front that we present to within that meeting as far as answering questions and everything else.
Yeah, I
If we
think-
need to relax on some of I know there was a lot of discussion at the Board of Selectmen meeting the other night with some of the issues and the perennial issues and complaints about, the board somehow trying to circumvent the towns, and it tends to happen, as far as like their complaints, they get lobbied, but, I think that there were some concerns around some of the aspects of the, use of the space, the use of the parking lot, et cetera, within that. And I just think we need to, if there are concerns, just let them have it at this point and move forward to try to, 'cause it isn't, ultimately I feel it is in our best interest to, at this point, given what the town's decision has been and everything else, to, obviously allow Durham to have that building.
Our action tonight to approve the MOU is similar to what the Board of Selectmen did,
Right.
so that we can move forward to wrap it up. And that's what the district meeting will be about. It's carefully how we have to work, what they have to vote on. We're not voting on the use of the building, we're not voting on, any of the town issues. We're voting on at night, should the district accept moving forward to do that. So we will obviously hear other issues, but I think we have to narrow the question carefully, that what we're voting on at the district meeting is simply, shall we accept this
Right.
this property?
And that other components can be resolved, continue to be resolved. maybe.
Yeah, I mean, even at the Board of Selectmen, they said that there's an issue on some language relating to use of the parking lots, and that we'll resign that in the definitive agreement later on. And they were willing to do that. Anything else on that, Matt?
No, not on the
Well,
map.
I think, Bob,
but-
Mr. Chairman, you're correct, right? I mean, the reason why the agenda before you talks about, you look at the next agenda item, right? We talk about the MOU, we talk about the conveyance of the property. We reference the ability for the superintendent and the board chairperson to, enter into another agreement, which is a purchase and sale or a definitive agreement, whatever you want to call it. And there's another process to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because the town says, look, until we know for sure that you have the authorization to convey the property, which requires district meeting approval under 10-56, we're not ready to do a purchase and sale agreement. So we're kind of operating in steps here, but the goal with the agenda item that's going to follow was to avoid going back to a district meeting. Right? So that's why it's all combined into one item. But yes, you'll have further negotiations, and you're hoping that the people who go to the district meeting say, look, we agree on the conveyance, we've seen the MOU, we've seen where you're kind of headed, and we get there might be some tweaks and changes, and you'll come back and you'll authorize that, and you'll update the board as the process goes on, and same for the town process too.
I have a clarifying question. So this was voted on in May, when we did the school referendum, right? Is that when this?
I'm having a hard time here.
Yeah, Missy Booth was asking, when was the town vote, right, to acquire the?
To acquire this. It was back in May, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To allocate a certain amount of money
just to put it out there, the reason that it's taken June, July, August, September, October, November, 6 months, is because we had to do this MOU.
Correct.
We're not dragging our feet. This is just, I just want it to be clear.
The town had due diligence, the town had inspections, we had to get a survey done.
Right.
You had to do a lot of other work that,
Yeah, I understand. I want it
Yeah.
to be kind of out there, and then are we planning on sending out a mailer, or are we gonna put something in the town Times, or is Doug gonna write something and put it on the website, that we're having this? Are we gonna have more information? Or are we just gonna present something?
I think we have to issue a notice of the meeting, and in that notice, we need to put information related to what's gonna happen at the meeting. And I think for sure we need to put the map in the notice so people know clearly where the property is, because I think that's probably the biggest single question, is how much land are we getting and where is it gonna be?
Matt, is that acceptable for us to send something home? I know we can't with referendum at this point, but is it different for district meetings?
Yeah, the statute, 9-369 governs pending referendum. This is not a pending referendum, this is a district meeting. So you are authorized to send stuff out to people to let them know about it,
Thank you.
including your students.
So I mean, if you send
It would be
something.
nice if the board, authorized that, and we're at a special meeting, but, in terms of what you can put on the website, in terms of, sending out emails, even using your government, your Board of Ed email, that's all okay. The pending referendum rules will not apply here.
Good.
And I also think it's
It can't be
important,
petitioned to referendum or anything like that. So-
when we send that out, I also think it's important to send out the prior vote numbers and exactly what that was, the voting process, because another common criticism is that town meetings have less weight within the town systems than a general referendum vote that's open, and I just don't want people to be duplicitous in their rationale that somehow within a smaller town meeting convention that that they are going to try to overturn a potential vote that was done by a larger number within a larger setting.
It's also, Middlefield will be there too, so it's
Correct.
interesting.
You're right. And yeah, and I agree. I think Middlefield more than anybody has much to lose in the absence of this transfer or the lack of this transfer occurring.
There are other steps that occur after this, as you can see in the MOU. There's a bunch of land use issues that the town has to go through, which will be interesting on their part.
And just, Matt, since you're on, so if this vote was to fail at district meeting, what would be the steps? Would it be considered that could you consider, I guess, that it was a failure based on the MOU terms and continue the negotiation process and not have to restart with a, general, I guess, vote on the whole, building component, or is, I just trying to figure out where we would be at that point because I think that's something also important to convey to the public, that if a no vote doesn't necessarily mean that it goes back, that it just means that potentially all we're going to do is just continue to make modifications to the MOU and bring it back.
Yeah, that's a good question and a fair point, right? So, and I know, let me just speak on the issue of, I know there was some concern about whether this had to go to district meeting, and I can just tell you, it's not even a close call in my mind. We're not overly conservative, but the statute is crystal clear. 1056 governs what regional school districts can do, and that is contrasted with 10-47, which is what a regional board of education can do. And if you look at that, the conveyance term is omitted in 10-47 and inserted in 10-56. So we did look at that very carefully, but it's really, to me, it's actually not a very close call. It's pretty clear that the statute differentiates between what a board can do and a district can approve with the term conveyance. But so to that point, if it failed, presumably the people who were there would speak and say why. They would think, and there'd be questions at whether it's the MOU or whatever. And yes, the board would take that, the town would take that, revise the MOU accordingly, and then you could go back to a district meeting. Absolutely.
Okay.
You could vote. There's no rule, but however law that prohibits how often you could vote. But presumably you would, take the feedback and try to accommodate the requests of the people who were there who voted no.
Okay.
I think it's important to note that, we're voting here is to accept this MOU.
Right.
If this MOU isn't accepted, we'll then go back and revise the MOU to make it acceptable.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's very important to convey to
We're
the
not
public.
changing the town's vote on referendum
Sure.
to
Yeah.
acquire the property.
That's a very good point.
Because people might vote no, thinking that they
Sure.
don't want it to
Sure.
go through. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Matt, you're on.
This is Bob Giammartino. Matt, I had a couple questions. I know when we go to a town meeting, there is an opportunity for people to amend proposal and vote on an amendment at that time. And
Similarly, when we go to town meeting to vote on town budget, people can add or subtract items, provided the majority of people there agree with it. And if it exceeds a certain amount, it triggers that it goes to referendum. So in this process, in this meeting we have coming up, is there an opportunity for someone to propose an amendment to the MOU that gets agreed to or not? So it's a good question. If you look at 10-47, one of the last sentences in there talks about how a district meeting, in this case for a regional school district, should be operated very similar to a town meeting. I think it would be inappropriate to increase the purchase price. I think that would be, to your point, right, about expenditures. I think that might not be allowed, right? Someone couldn't amend it to all make you guys, make the town pay $1 million. But I think amending the MOU, I mean, there's court cases on this. And I really believe that at the end of the day, if there was an amendment to change a clause or something like that, it's probably okay. Yeah, it's a good question. I think town meetings are really seen as, a bastion of democracy, and if people show up, they can amend it. But there is, it gets a little different when you start talking about appropriation and money involved. But I think in this case, it would be okay. Yep. So for instance, getting back to one of the earlier items we discussed that Lucy brought up regarding Picket Lane, one of the main reasons that in the original negotiations Picket Lane was excluded by the town was that it required significant capital to repair and replace the culvert, knowing that there was a large expense that would need to be incurred. And that expense has now been incurred. The road is in great shape. Given that Picket Lane is an access point to Allenbrook Park and now presumably community center, it seems to me that it should become a public road and owned and operated by the town of Durham. So if someone were to make a proposal like that at the meeting, that last easement on the last page of the MOU, which was access to the property through Picket Lane, if somebody proposed a change to that, that could be acceptable at that point, right? It could. I mean, what I will say is then the Durham approval of that MOU is not valid anymore, right? They approved a certain document, so you're going back to the Board of Selectmen of the town of Durham. But yeah, I suppose that would be okay.
Yeah, and then the town of Durham would reject that.
Pardon me?
Then the town of Durham Board of Selectmen would then reject the revision to the new MOU. Because they've approved one document, they're not gonna end up, we put a roadway in there. By the way, Bob, the road is not paved, that's next summer. The road is gonna be paved and a culvert is gonna be replaced next summer.
Paving's probably.
The road is actually in awful shape right now.
I think, just speaking for Kim and I, this issue came up and it was a non-starter from the town, and our goal was to move this thing forward and to say that that is an issue that could be resolved in the future, and that we didn't want it to hold up this process, but.
Even after the culvert has
Yes.
been addressed, it was still a non-starter for the rest of Picket Lane.
Before you got on, Bob, I was saying that in the future, there's gonna be a couple issues. One, if we don't plow the road because the school's closed and the town needs to get it, there'll be an issue about
That's
plowing.
part of the discussion. Yep.
That'll
We
happen
brought
in
that
the
up.
future.
We spoke about that too,
That'll
and
happen in the future.
they would follow the school calendar as much as possible, they said. And they recognize that we may not be, plowing roads as quickly as, this road as quickly as they'd like, and that is part of the
Yeah.
understanding.
And so those issues will come up in the future, and I think it's a future boards, to stay on that issue, because, and I think you could do traffic counts and other things and try to show that there's a reason to make this a public road. But right now, that's not part of this agreement. And I think if somebody brought it up and amended the MOU, it would crash.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but it's just, I mean, it's a timing thing. We could have held this meeting last week and approved or not approved it, and then Durham's Board of Selectmen meeting could have been this week. It's, you know, the order of the approvals doesn't really make a difference. It's more, what do the people aggregate feel? So, anyway. All right, I just wanted to understand it legally, what could be done at a district meeting, what couldn't, what isn't, is not allowed, and I think, Matt, you gave a pretty clear explanation as to what can be done with the MOU. So I know the desire is for an up or down vote, but that may not be what the people end up voting on.
All right, any other questions or comments for?
I do have a few things, and the reason I'm asking is because really it's the first time I've had a chance to read the whole thing. When, I just wanted a clarification on the list of easements. Some of them are permanent, some of them are temporary. What does that exactly mean? And what happens when the temporary runs out? You know, for instance, there's a well feeding the district water system, that's temporary. I was just curious as to what exactly that meant.
Because
Yeah.
we're gonna go to the water line, so we only need, access to the wells for the softball field, and there's different reasons why we need water, but we don't need it forever, so that's why it's temporary. There's a temporary easement for the water sprinkler fire supply, because
Yep.
that's all connected. There's a temporary easement for the culvert replacement, because they're gonna need to get on that property to do the replacement. But
Okay.
then there's a permanent one, because part of the culvert, in order to maintain it, will still be on that property. So
Okay.
that's the difference between temporary and permanent.
Okay, I understand that. The other thing is, as I was reading through this, I'm thinking, okay, the MOU goes through and, you know, this will just kind of move forward except for some of the P and Z stuff that has to be done. But then I started reading 30 days here, 90 days there. Could you just kind of go over what would the timeline be? Let's assume we have our district meeting and it gets approved. Okay, because then there was something about an approval, it says something about approval period, and you had to wait till the approval period. Is that like when people can contest it? Is that what that is? Because sometimes when you make a decision, with planning and zoning, you have so many days that people can contest. I don't know. I just was curious as to exactly how long it would take from the time this finally gets approved to it finally happening. And I don't know if anyone knows.
Maybe Matt, can you answer that? I know there's certain, like Lucy said, there's approval periods, there's due diligence
Right.
periods.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a real estate lawyer. I can't say exactly. I know real estate lawyers can be painstaking in their details sometimes. But the MOU, I think a lot of the work got done, right? And that's why
Yes.
fees got incurred over the summertime. So if let's say December 1st, the district meeting authorized it, I'd like to think this would not be more than a couple of months to get to a purchase and sale agreement and get this done. I mean, most of the hard work has been done, been surveyed, the environmental reports came back, the town authorized it. So, you know, famous last words, I'm promising a timeline for some of the lawyers. But I don't know why this would take a long time. I think this is a big vote. I think that the MOU, normally, just to be clear, we skip the MOU. You just go right to a purchase and sale agreement. The problem here is you need the authorization to convey the property.
That's what I
And
thought.
thus the intermediary step. So
That's
I
what
would
I
like
was
to think it
wondering.
wouldn't be that long,
Yeah, that's
barring
what I was
some
wondering.
unforeseen, development.
I know, because when I first started to read this, I said, even if this all goes through, it looks like it's gonna be like 6 months before anything could even happen, and I said, wow.
I think at the meeting, we need to have somebody that shows what the timeline should be.
Yeah.
And so this is, after this MOU, then this is what's gonna happen, both from the town and from the district point of view. This is the schedule that we anticipate, so we'll get a purchase and sale agreement at such and such a time
Yeah.
within the next 6 months or 4 months, whatever it is.
The last thing I just wanted to put on the record is that I do feel that Pickett Lane should really be a Durham town road, and I just wanted that on the record.
Okay.
At some point, if not now, at some point.
Is Matt gonna be at the meeting in case there's questions or no?
Matt, will you or Greg be at the meeting on December 1st?
Right now, Pete Marr, who
Okay.
does a lot of your work, is scheduled to be there.
Good.
And Greg, I know, cannot be there. But you might be able to call in, but I don't know how that would work at a district meeting, so we were talking about it today. I am not sure if you'll need both me and Pete, but I think Pete knows that if he comes and Greg cannot come or be there, he'll have to be fully briefed on this. And so what I'll do is I'll make a note.
Yeah.
We need a timeline, an expectation of when this would be done.
Right.
Okay?
Great.
But
And
Pete can raise that representation
I'll
on
touch
December
base with
1st,
Greg.
absolutely.
I'll touch base with Greg too and tell
Make
him
sure they don't
if
have a
he
lawyer,
can-
guys. I know. I'll make sure.
Yeah. And Kim was saying she would get contact with Greg.
I'll get in contact with Greg and let him know the kind of things that maybe will be asked, so that that he can maybe help me do some slides or something with timelines.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great, Kim. And look, Rich Roberts, the town attorney, and they've worked well to date, right? They got
Yeah.
through a cumbersome process this summer, so, it should not be that difficult. But again, we'll confirm, and I'm glad Kim will too.
We'll ask Rich to be there too, because a lot of these questions will be town-asked questions. So.
No, absolutely. And Rich is obviously a very good attorney with a lot of experience, so it'd
Right.
be helpful to have him there.
Great.
So one thing I noticed that was not in this memo of understanding that I would have liked to have seen, given how this property is located in the center of what is otherwise a school campus, is that in the event that the town decides to abandon the property or to sell the property, that the school, the Board of Education, the district has right of first refusal on the purchase of the property. And or what happens if the property is abandoned, the town obligated to demolish the building or what have you. And I know that this is a purchase and sale and should be handled at an arm's length, but if the school were to decide, if the town were to decide that, there's a better opportunity for the complex and we're going to move over to there, and what happened to the property, that I think, I would like to see something in here like that. I know it's not in here now.
I want to ask Greg about that, Kim, whether or not that is something that could be put into the final agreement. I know that the town had some issues about putting some language in the final agreement, and maybe that's something that could be thought about. Any other comments? All those in favor of the resolution to approve the MOU, between Regional School District 13 and the Town of Durham for the conveyance of Corn School property to the Town of Durham, please say aye.
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 We have to have a
We have to
roll
go around
call.
and around.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
did we make
Yeah.
a motion?
Yeah, we started off with a motion. You made it and
Oh,
Missy
that's
seconded.
right.
kind of felt like an hour ago.
So, Missy Booth, aye.
Norm?
Norm Hicks, aye.
Bob Moore, aye.
Lucy Petrella, aye.
Andrew Taylor, aye.
Jamie Rohrback, aye.
Bob? Martino?
Martino, aye.
Maura?
Maura Caminello, aye.
All right, ayes have it. Thank you. The next item is to approve the resolution.
Before we move on, I just want to be clear on this communication issue, because I heard a lot of people say a lot of different things. Are we doing something like now, or do you want to do something like right before the meeting? Are we, we're not limited in expenditures. I heard last meeting talking about maybe a mailer. Is that something that we want? And then I heard some detail about getting into the specifics about what this is and what this isn't. And that part probably makes me the most uncomfortable, because I think people are probably already confused about this issue. So to me, I would think the main thing is to get out that the vote by the town was not sufficient in and of itself last May to convey this property transfer. The district now has to convey this and we need people to come out and state their opinions on that and vote. I mean, is that essentially the message?
Yes,
Yeah.
but also to Andrew's point, I think it needs to be clear that this is not negating the vote that was taken in May. What these people are voting on
Okay,
is
yeah,
to
that part I
accept
got,
the
Just
yeah.
the
MOU.
terms.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just think, I mean, with the holiday being next week, I kind of think, you know, the sooner the better, the information gets
Sure.
out, and then maybe can do something. If we're gonna do it through Parent Square, you can blast it again, like Monday or Tuesday, the week of the vote, but I just
Okay.
think, I think in other things, you know, we
Well,
weren't
here
maybe
clearly
as
we're
clear.
here clearly we're unrestricted, so I'm
Correct.
feeling.
I think
Right.
the most important thing is also to get the map out there, 'cause I think people wanna know what's happening. They already know the building, they don't know, a lot of the questions always been about, you know, where's the property line, how much is coming, where's it going? So,
And in my opinion, it like less is more, like
Yeah.
clear and to the point,
Yes.
not a lot of.
That's what I was kinda
Not a
getting
lot
at,
of
yeah.
jargon, not a lot of big words, just make it
And I think
easy
the
to
other point
understand.
is our communication advocating for a position on this, or is it more informing that this vote is taking place?
Well, I don't know, I mean, if we're allowed to advocate, I
Yeah,
would
Matt, can we advocate in this mail out?
You can advocate, yep.
I would advocate, you need to vote yes, otherwise, if this
Sure.
doesn't pass and it comes back to the district, we're spending $1 million to knock it down.
At
Cause we've already
least-
made that
At
decision.
least $1 million,
Yeah.
at least.
At
Sure.
least.
Yeah,
I mean, it's gotta be,
I think that's important for people to understand that.
All right, the next item 5, is a resolution to call a special district meeting to approve the conveyance to the town of Durham of the Corn School property, to approve the memorandum of understanding between Regional School District 13 and the town of Durham for the conveyance of Corn School property, and to authorize the superintendent and board chairperson to take any actions necessary to complete the sale of the Corn School property, including the execution of a purchase and sale agreement or similar agreement. Do I have a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? I think we've already had a discussion.
Do we have a date?
Yeah, hey, I was gonna add something on the communication, and you started reading the resolution.
Okay, well, it's the same subject, so go ahead.
Yeah, so, regarding the communication, I think the entirety of the memo of understanding needs to be available on the website, along with the map. And whatever we send out, we need to mail it to every single house. And, I'm not sure if taxpayers, property owner taxpayers are allowed to vote at this meeting, or if it's just registered voters. So I think we need to understand that as well, and we need to communicate that very clearly as well. Because I think you may all be aware that when we do a referendum
Yes.
on a bonding, I believe all taxpayers. So if you're a property owner but non-resident, you're allowed to vote. But if you're, I think that's what it is. I could be mistaken. Matt, you know this better than I do. Yep. So if I'm speaking, who can vote at this meeting? We need to understand that.
Yeah, no problem. So Matt Ritter here, Shipman and Goodwin. If you look at the warning of the special town meeting in your packet, if you look at the first sentence, it says electors and persons qualified to vote in town meetings of Durham and Middlefield. And that's taxpayers, exactly. This is just like a town meeting. So if you're assessed, I think it's $1,000, you can vote. So the way this will work on December 1st, and I was talking to Meg about this a little bit, is you're going to have to sign people in to demonstrate that they're voters. And if somebody's a taxpayer, they should bring a tax bill or some sort of proof that they are assessed, $1,000 or more in one of the two towns. So they can vote, yes.
So that, we need to put that in a notice as well.
The registrar of voters should be there.
Yes.
And this is very different, by the way, just to highlight that. The plan amendment statute, which we know so well, was very clear that only electors could
Yeah,
vote.
right.
So it's interesting how there's a different differentiation of the statute that occurred.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to make sure we were clear in our notice to the taxpayers, which means in addition to sending the notice out to each of the households in the town, we should also ask the tax collectors in both towns for the property owners above 1,000, so that we can make sure we mail, because if I am a non-resident who lives, a non-resident who owns the property in the town, because I run my business here, we should be notifying that business as well. So I just want to make sure that we get that out to everybody.
Is that covered by public notice, Matt, or not?
Yes, the warning in the newspaper is very clear. I mean, I know it's legalese, but it's very clear. It's electors and persons eligible to vote in town meetings, and that's taxpayers. So the warning is legally sufficient, yes. Right. Obviously, so, MAG needs to let, the registrars need to know in the towns, because, or they're going to have to give you a voter list. Someone's got to check people into the district meeting, because there's going to be a vote, right? It's not like your budget meetings where you might adjourn it to referendum. You're going to have an actual vote here, so.
Yeah.
So who's gonna do that?
Yeah, and that's my question, because this is all new to me. Are we just to have staff to do that, or are we to go to the town or the registrars, or ask them to do
Registrars,
it?
I think the registrars have to
Okay.
be there.
I mean, the registrars are who do it for a
They
town
would have
meeting.
to
That's-
be
that's
there.
why I
Both
thought.
towns,
Yeah.
both towns, yeah.
You would hope they would do it, or send a deputy, yes,
Yeah.
but let them know. I mean, they may have plans. You know what I mean? So, good to let them know.
Yep.
Yep. So when you send out the notice to the households, and if we can get to businesses as well, it's not mandatory we do it. It's not mandatory we mail anything to anybody.
Right.
I'm just saying, if we want to be full disclosure, totally transparent, and let people really understand what's going on and why and how, I think whatever's written up has to be clear, concise, and be mailed out to everybody. And then there should be links back to the RSD13 website and to both towns, in both towns, and the RSD website should post the memorandum of understanding, and the map, so that people have it, and the text of whatever we're mailing out, just so that it's all there, it's all completely transparent.
We'll share a draft of whatever we're gonna send out before we send it.
But this also is needs to be kind of a quick turnaround,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I trust you.
What?
Didn't hear what Missy just said, I'm
It's
sorry.
a quick turnaround, and she trusts Doug.
It's a quick turn. Well, and I appreciate that, but again, this is kind of new stuff for me, and we want to get it right.
Yep. Any other comments on this? Not, all in favor, please say aye. Missy?
Aye.
You got
Missy
us?
Booth, aye.
Norm Hicks, aye.
Bob Moore, aye.
Lucy Petrella, aye.
Andrew Taylor, aye.
Jamie Rohrback, aye.
Bob,
Biamontino, aye.
Maura,
Maura Carminello, aye.
thank you. Any other questions? Move
Yeah, did
motion
we
to
actually have a
adjourn?
date?
So
Because I
moved.
don't have my calendar with me.
December 1st.
December 1st, okay. I don't have my
Second.
I'll
calendar.
second, yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
So-
Thank you.